It calls for extreme sobriety and impeccable behavior. Always such a pleasant way to start the day.
It's immature, and it's borderline offensive, and I like it.
And now, it's time for In the Neighborhood with Matt Jelly and Gunner on 93.3 CFMU.
And it is time for us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're gonna be piss full of vinegar today, aren't you?
No, I haven't had coffee yet, so we'll see.
I fear.
Yeah.
I fear when I go to bed and touching base with the internet before I go to bed. I don't know why. It's like
I don't want you to say bed and touching in the same sentence.
Okay,
to me.
that's fine. All right.
Okay.
Really, you want to take it there already?
No.
You want to go that
No.
direction in the next couple hours?
No.
Good morning. Welcome to the show. It's In the Neighborhood, of course, with Gunner and Matt Jelly here on 93.3 CFMU. And as I was saying, I hate when I go to bed at night. And for some reason, I think I should really touch base with the internet just to see what I'm in for tomorrow on where Jelly's brain's going to be at.
And my brain's just going to explode.
And how unfortunate I'm like going, oh, he's going to be pissing vinegar, man. Like, you just watch. He's going to be like throwing stuff in the studio. He's going to be morally outraged. He's going to be... And then I sit down here and I listen to a brilliant pre-recorded show for Sounds of the Hammer.
Sounded pretty good.
Didn't even know it was my show.
There you go.
That's how good it was. I was like, what magnificent show is this?
There you go.
And I look over, you come stumbling, you're like, oh, hey, oh, hi, oh, hey. And I look at you, I'm like, he's tired.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So what? So last night, yourself, Dan Jelly, Graham Crawford, the ghost of Elvis Presley. Let's see, Lola Falana's ghost.
I don't know.
Jackie Mason's ghost.
Anyone
who was an old Vegas performer, their ghost showed up as part of a rally and saying, "Casinos aren't good. Look what they did to me. They killed me." You know. Yeah.
Well, it was the watered down Flamborough consultation last night about the casino issue. So the city's doing two public consultation meetings. They're doing they did the one last night, and there's one tonight at City Hall starting at 6:30 with a rally, no rally at 5:30.
So there's no rally then. So don't show up.
No, there is a rally.
Oh, there's a no.
What, are you working for McCanty? Yeah.
Hey! What studies you read from, eh, guy? Huh? I got a study right here, right over here. Look at this study right over here.
Well, that's culturally insensitive, but anyway.
I know.
But so they
PJ doesn't talk like that, by the way.
No,
he's a very well spoken man. I liked him.
Yeah, well,
even though you hate his guts, I like him.
He's well spoken. Yeah, sure.
You won't deny I hate his guts thing, but the well spoken,
yeah.
Okay,
I'm getting there. No, so it was a last night was primarily for the benefit of the folks who are concerned about the future of Flamborough Downs, the current gambling facility in Hamilton, the track and slots facility that we have, which I went out to the other night. I signed up for the self-exclusion program for problem gamblers. Just to
see the process.
Third time I was ever in a casino, and I've only played one slot machine once when I was 18. So, but just to see how that process works. But so the meeting last night was good because it was kind of you had a combination of, we had a sizable group there from sort of our no downtown casino group. And we knew where we were and were respectful of, this is more a meeting for the benefit of Flamborough, our meetings tonight.
Right.
So, but there were people from sort of the horse racing industry were there with their horses in tow and everything. So there's a panel of guests, which is pretty much the same panel that's going to be there tonight at the casino meeting. So there are folks there's a guy there's Bruce Barber from Flamborough Downs. There's Tony Battanti from OLG. There was a guy from the Canadian Gaming Association, so essentially just a lobbyist. Ken Leenders from the Hamilton Police Service. Then Dr. Elizabeth Richardson from our own public health department. She's the one who wrote the report that we've mentioned on the show here
that
before.
everyone should read.
That everybody should read.
You have to read it.
And I forget the gentleman's name, but there was a guy there from Center for Addictions and Mental Health as well. So the research they've done has kind of informed a lot of what's coming out of public health departments across Ontario. So good panel of guests. I could have used one or two more just to sort of balance things out a little bit. But
what do you mean by balance things out?
Well, or actually I could have used one less. I actually don't think we needed to hear hear from the gaming association guy. I don't know, like, to have. I'd rather hear from experts than lobbyists, right? And I get you've got the guy from Flamborough Downs, and he's kind of more of a stakeholder in this, and I get why, But it felt a bit weird just to have a guy that was there just to represent the industry, as if the OLG isn't doing that as well. But all in all, I can't really complain, because what we heard out of some of the panelists were again that the proximity to a casino is everything in terms of what happens with problem gambling, suicides, depression, all sorts of things. So. That was really reiterated last night in no uncertain terms. And there was an economics professor from here at Mac, and I off the top of my head, I can't remember his name, but because I'd butcher it. But he was great too. He sort of made the case, that economically casinos are not a surefire, good thing. And he said we really need to proceed with caution. We can't just take the sort of the job creation numbers. They're going to talk about assessment along with the hotel that PJ already promised, and we can look at those numbers. We also really need to look at the substitution effect, as they say, the cannibalization of other businesses. So all in all, it was a good meeting, and I mean, it was more so for folks of Flamborough to kind of speak their mind, and what I heard was they support the track remaining in Flamborough, primarily the track. They're not as into the slots as they are the track itself and the history it's got in Flamborough, 37 years, right? So. And I'm not a big horse racing person. I am primarily concerned that they don't put a casino in the downtown core, but they seem to get that point as well. They seem to get the point that they're talking about putting it in an area that's 150 times more residentially dense. So there's a distinction to be made there. So it was good.
So at the end of it, everyone had a nice overall positive feeling about it.
I think so. Yeah. It's.
Was there any arguments or yelling and screaming? Because when you talk about these,
there was no yelling and screaming.
But when you talk about these things, and if I'm just tuning in right now and we're discussing something, I'm sort of just getting into this whole subject matter.
Yeah.
That whole human side of me, though, like, was there a fight?
No, not really. It was. I think
I'm not talking like Hess
people
Village
were pretty
fights,
well behaved. I mean, there were a couple of times when things were said by the OLG, or there were a couple titters there here and there in the audience, just sort of.
But people weren't out loud screaming, "You're a liar! You're full of crap!"
Nobody shouted. Nobody
over top of one another.
No.
Yeah. What do you expect for tonight then?
I think it could be a bit testier. I know, like it was a big crowd last night.
I saw
and it was
a picture.
A race. It was actually a race night at Flamborough Downs last night. So even some of the horse racing folks might not have been able to make it. But
I did see a picture of and a headline that you guys were on the spec.
Yeah.
Doing this, and I saw a picture of your brother Dan, and Dan said, "Geez, he said he didn't like the picture because it didn't really capture how many people were there."
We had.
But I said, look at Matt, like he's a really large guy. I mean, what kind of lens are you going to use if you're a photographer?
Thanks,
I think you guys are. I think I'm really, casino guys are far too critical of everything.
You keep calling me fat, and you might be mayor someday. Buddy.
Yeah. It's 8:11 right now. Gunner, new mayor, soon to be mayor, Gunner Bertina here on 93.3. You listen to the sounds of the neighborhood here with Gunner Bertina.
Sounds of the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood here with Matt Jelly and Gunner on 93.3. Just douching around the first opening segment. But I'm glad that you guys did that, and it looked like it was okay.
The last two speakers last night were actually I took notice. There was I don't know if this is exactly the last two. Donna Skelly showed up.
Donna Skelly, former
CH host,
former host,
and she was also she ran as the progressive conservative candidate in Ancaster Dundas Flamborough Westdale last election. I almost ran against her, but decided not to for the NDP.
And she still lost.
She still lost, but and Ted McMeekin is obviously the current sitting MPP, but she got up and spoke, and she obviously is going to run in the next election. She's already going to be a candidate, but she made the point. Why, so this deficit that the province is trying to fill, they did that over many years.
Right.
So why are we in such a hurry to ram casinos into downtown cores and to shut down all the tracks? And she said, we need to give people time to have a referendum the way that we always have with gaming facilities in the province.
Right.
that every time before the OLG modernization, that was an absolute must, that you had to have a referendum.
Mm-hmm.
So good to hear actually a member of that party, the Progressive Conservatives, saying that. The NDP have also been saying the same thing, that we need to, in the very least, we need to give the people a chance to actually decide this democratically. Because no one ran on this. No one ran on this idea that they were going to modernize the OLG, whether it's at the provincial level. No local politician that I can recall, ran on the idea that you're going to put a casino in the downtown core, right? So I think there's, it is such a short timeline to make such a big decision, I think.
It's great that you just said that, because I had a conversation with the casino yesterday with, I come in on Wednesdays, I do some stuff here at the station, and I caught a ride in with Manolis Zontanos and Gavin Stevens, are comedians, and Gavin is a very, very social-minded guy, and he gets riled up pretty quick.
Yeah.
But the strange part is Manolis, who, if anyone's ever met him in Hamilton, he's kind of like he's like, what do you mean there's a casino coming in?
Yeah,
like he just sort of catches. He's not stupid by any means.
No, not at all.
But he's got his own. He does his own thing, and all of a sudden he started hearing about the casino thing, and so it was like he was grilling me, and he was like getting upset over it, and he goes, well, what's this? What is this I hear about this casino? Tell me what's going on. And I said, well, there's a casino coming in, and I gave him the backstory. He goes, well, I heard that guy was on your radio show, and it sounded all stupid. And I'm like, well, the show didn't sound stupid.
Oh, no, I would agree with him. That some parts of it sounded pretty stupid.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole thing was that Manolis was just like, he was actually shocked. Like, he goes, so there's nothing we can do to stop this. I go, Manolis, I said to him, my personal belief, Manolis, is that, and I've told this to you too, is that I believed that this was set up well before anyone ever, like 2 years this has been in the making, with people behind the scenes, like, okay, if we want to get this to happen, this is the best time to have it. That's the only time you ever really plan a business or a campaign, is like you plan well ahead. Nothing ever just happens week to week. Oh my God, we found a cure for cancer. We didn't know, but we found it. Last week we found it. Just telling you about it now.
Yeah.
It's like, so I had that feeling that that's what it is.
I hear that from folks too, and I may even be partially responsible for maybe some of this idea that it's a done deal, because I've said similar things myself a while ago, that because I was just getting the sense. I was getting a sense that no matter if even my councillor votes against it, if every councillor around his ward votes against it, there's still enough councillors to impose this on us, right? So there's been this sort of feeling of inevitability, and
that's
a feeling of inevitability for about 6 months too.
That's a great word, what you just said there.
I know.
It really is, man.
I picked the best.
I know, but I think that's just like, that's it. That's the feeling that I've been, that the city of Hamilton, and that's that. And it's something that I've been fighting against, like this sort of apathy and this, like I told you before, it's like, geez, don't you just want to deal in the positive around Hamilton?
Yeah.
And it always seems to be that we're always getting hit with the negative, not the positive.
And it's funny too, because like the more and more I read from folks who are pro casino, whether it's spec commenters or even some of the things that PJ, Lauren, Larry are saying, about they're trying to say it's just a small group who are against it, and they're against everything. Right, and it's such a dishonest argument, because you know what? I'm all for a strong downtown, and that's why I'm against a casino, right? Like, I'm all for living wage jobs, and I don't think that's what a casino brings to us. I think it brings us more crappy part-time contract positions, which is something we have an abundance of. We need skilled labor.
It is always easy to make that argument when you're always fielding an air of desperation on everything.
Right.
Oh, there's no jobs in Hamilton. Oh, the jobs here are part-time. This is bad. That's bad. Oh, you should have it, because we really need the work. And if you don't bring this casino in, downtown is going to fall into a black hole, and there's no jobs. And if you go against this casino, that means you're not for progress. You're not for jobs.
Right.
Well, and that's the argument.
And if the casino is such a good idea, then they shouldn't have to belittle their opponents and pretend that they don't care about.
But that's how you. But that's how you
unpatriotic.
That's how you.
It's just bullshit.
That's politics.
Yeah.
That is politics, and you're always going to get that. And
I know.
You see that with any argument, or with anyone who's trying to push it as an agenda, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's their business, though, Matt.
Yeah.
It really is, because when I look at it, it's like, as much as these people, as much as I don't want people to commit suicide, I don't want to see people's lives ruined by a casino. there are people who can gamble responsibly. I personally don't know them because I don't agree with. Because I see so much in this around me where money is better spent, but it's your choice. It's your money. I get that. Sure. I really do get that, and I really get people saying, let's get some more hotels. Let's get some more tourism. I get that too.
I think the market is already there for it because, like we've covered, PJ already promised a hotel, so there are already people building hotels in the core right now, right, without a casino, right, so. I think the market is there. It's primed to build hotels. Nobody's against hotels. It's like,
yeah,
that's the thing. And it's sort of there's this small group of proponents, and it is really a small group who are trying to put it out there that that it's a bunch of communists or and I love the term usual suspects because it kind of implies criminality, right? That we're suspects all of a sudden. It's just a nice dog whistle, it's dog whistle political language. It's it's meant for the intended recipient, and it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting that this is where we're at, and disappointing that even this downtown casino idea wasn't rejected outright 6 months ago as it should be.
Let's face it, if their target demographic, as PJ said, is somewhere from 80 to 100,000, put it in Ancaster.
Their target demographic is the small percentage of the population who can't control their gambling habit, and they spend a third, if not more, up to 40%. They contribute 40% to the OLG's revenues. That's their target demographic. They can say anything they want about it. It's going to be, they're looking for 80 to 100,000. It's not
people who make that kind of money. Put it in Ancaster. Yeah, go ahead.
No, Ancaster is a dense residential community too, and
put it there. But if that's your stance, that's what you're doing.
The least residentially dense place in the city is Flamborough Downs. That is as far away from people as you get. The only other place they could put it is the Glanbrook landfill, which I'd be all for. I think that's where casinos belong. But
the landfill.
It's so hopefully if people can make it tonight, the rally starts at 5:30. The event starts at 6:30 in council chambers at City Hall, which is of course at Main and Bay, 71 Main Street West. And there will be signs available for folks who agree with us on the no side.
What about the pro side,
and by all means, if you haven't made up your mind about it, come down, because there will be an abundance of information about it. You can tune in as well on Cable 14. And if you want to sign up too, you can send in a question. It's hamilton.ca/casino. If you're for the casino, I can't help you.
But there should be people who are for the casino there with signs.
Yeah, I hear 600 signs have been printed up for the pro side by the mercantes themselves.
But that's just it. Who else is going to print them up?
Right, because there is no passionate group of citizens in the city that are hopping up and down to put this thing. It's the proponents themselves who stand to gain directly. So
And what about the snowblowers?
Snowblowers?
Now they're going to be. Now I heard through the grapevine that they're going to be giving away. City of Hamilton has paid $5 million in snowblowers, and they're going to give them out to the citizens at this rally because
you've been reading Hammer in the News. I think
they cut all the funding for city snow removal. Now, is this true?
No.
No?
No. There will be no free snow blowers at this meeting.
I mean, there's no snow right now.
No.
But considering
there'll be some people blowing some hot air, but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, I'm just curious.
It might melt your snow. Yeah.
I was just curious. I just wanted to know if that was actually true or not.
I should say our guests this morning are Steve Buist, investigative reporter from the Hamilton Spectator, author of the Code Red series that folks might remember a couple of years ago that first came out, as well as the Born series that was part of that as well on infant death, and Rachelle Martin, crisis mental health nurse who works in the Brantford ER, and she lives here in Hamilton, works in Brantford's ER.
They coming in, or are we doing phoners?
They're both phoners this morning, yeah.
Okay, I'm on it, baby.
Yeah.
Let's get connected. Stereo MCs right now in the neighborhood. Gunner and Matt Jelly. You'll love it. It's a good show today.
Our guest this morning is Steve Buist, investigative reporter of the Hamilton Spectator and one of the authors of the Code Red series in 2010. Steve, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure.
For some listeners who may not have caught the series when it first came out, the Code Red series, why don't you give us a bit of background just on how the project maybe came about and some of the findings that happened as a result of Code Red.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, the project was several years in development, which that in itself was a bit odd. But it started actually kind of backwards. We were actually thinking about ways that we could do some testing, and like environmental testing, soil, water, air, and it struck me. My background is actually in science. I have a degree in human biology.
That's
so
right.
I always like looking at things kind of with a scientific mindset. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, we could do some testing and reveal the results of bad soil in the north end or bad water in the harbor. But once you get beyond that, first of all, some of that's not really news.
Some of that story's been told many times, yeah.
Many times,
yeah.
And secondly, once you get past the headline, high cadmium levels in north end soil, you're left sort of with that. Okay, so what, and where do we go from there?
Right.
And so I'd been turning it around and thinking, what if we looked at where people lived and to see if that had some impact on their health? And I was still thinking more from an environmental standpoint. And the first thing you discover when you look into it is that trying to tease out just an environmental component to people's health is a lot trickier than you might imagine. But I was eventually put in touch with somebody who, as his job was a researcher who devoted his time to sort of mapping out people's health.
Right.
And so we put together this project, and what we did was we eventually got access to about 400,000 pieces of data that was basically every hospital and emergency room admission visit by any person who listed Hamilton as their address. And the best part of what we got was that not only did we get all of the medical things that happened to people when they turned up in the ER or the hospital, but we knew their age, their gender, and most importantly, we were able to locate them as a dot on the map, so to speak.
Right.
And what that allowed us to do was to group all of these things into small little, we'll call them neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then we were able to start looking at, okay, so what's happening in all of these neighborhoods around Hamilton, including the suburban parts of Hamilton. And what you find, and I guess the most shocking thing to people was that you would expect to see variation in people's health.
Sure.
Some places would be, here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
But what we saw when we started mapping it was that there was no sort of randomness to the maps. It was very clear that there was something going on.
Right.
And, for those who saw the series, what you found is that the sort of lower central part of the city of Hamilton, the sort of inner city, was just sort of grotesquely worse off when it came to people's health than some of the suburban, the wealthier suburban parts of Hamilton. And it was quite easy to come to the conclusion that, the wealthier you are, the healthier you are. And when you started mapping also the social and economic variables, so things like, people living below the poverty line or single-parent families or, the rates of people that drop out of high school or lack of education, map after map after map after map, they all look the same. They all matched up with those sort of crappy health outcomes that people in the lower inner city were suffering. And it was always the reverse. The people in the wealthier parts always did better.
Right. Right. And I mean, wealth isn't the only factor in that. It's also, as you're saying, environmental. There are, social issues that come along with it. Interesting that it started out as an environmental project and kind of ballooned into the Code Red series. Because, in my limited experience with environmental issues, you do find, I've seen a whole street where door to door, you've got folks that have various cancers, leukemia, that kind of thing, and you can just there's an issue there that you don't see that on some streets. You don't see it door to door like that. Like you don't see that kind of concentration, right? But it is very difficult in a way, though, to determine what set of factors have led to that, and what can you? It's hard to point the finger at one thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's that sort of classic chicken egg conundrum. I mean, all of what we're talking about is what is referred to by sort of sociologists and health researchers as the social determinants of health.
Right.
And it's this idea that there are so many factors that influence your health that don't seem to have anything to do with health at first glance. So things like your income,
right.
your level of education, your parent status, your gender, and all of these things are sort of mixed together into this soup, and it's very difficult to tease out, which is the most important one. Income, your sort of your financial standing is clearly a very important one, but then you start to think about it. Well, are you poor because you have poor health, and that's what led you to become poor because you couldn't maybe have the same type of level of employment as someone else, or maybe you're on disability, or was that caused by your lack of education, or was your lack of education caused by the fact that you had poor health?
Yeah, and so much if it's a chicken and egg situation, like you're saying, is your poor health as a result of not having the money for good food, that kind of thing, or is your poverty a result of your poor health outcomes? So it's hard to determine, and actually not just chicken and egg. It seems like there are multiple factors, and it's hard to that seem to sort of key into each other, right?
Yeah, and it's clearly there's clearly a sort of a spiraling effect too. So I mean, we know that people who are that the lower your income, the more likely you are to smoke.
Right.
So that has nothing to do really. That's sort of a, I don't want to say a lifestyle choice, but that's a behavior that it doesn't really matter whether you're rich or poor. Anyone can, I suppose, choose to smoke, but for some reason, the lower your income, the higher the smoking rates.
Right. Did you find that's true of all addictions, as far as alcoholism, drugs? Does that correlation continue? Gambling, perhaps?
Yeah, that I don't know, to be honest with you, and I'm not sure that there's any. I haven't seen anything that suggests that there's an income connection to alcoholism or drug addiction.
Right.
Obviously, being one of those types of people over the long term will probably lead you to poverty, but
right.
That's a different question altogether.
Yeah, and you did follow up as well with Born, which was a Code Red project as well, which examined the health of mothers and babies across Ontario, and you looked at birth records. What did that project find?
Yeah, that one was, we decided to focus solely on maternal health and birth outcomes. And that one, we sort of expanded it to the entire province. And what was interesting was we were able to do the same thing for Hamilton that we were, in Code Red. We were able to break the province down to the level of its, sort of quote-unquote neighborhoods.
Right.
And we were also able to look at communities as a whole. And again, because of the data that's collected by Stats Canada, we were able to match that up with social and economic factors, and there was really no sort of surprise to what we found with Born. I mean, we found exactly what we expected to find based on the Code Red project, which is the same thing translates across the province. Places that had lower incomes, higher levels of poverty, had poorer outcomes for the babies and poorer outcomes for the mothers, and right. Lower rates of prenatal visits and much higher rates of teen birth, like births to teen mothers. So, I mean, there was probably no great surprise there. I guess the nice thing, well, nice is maybe not the right word, but I guess the satisfying thing was that what we found in Code Red was not an anomaly. It translated across the entire province.
Right. And too, there are a lot of perceptions out there about whether it's the lower city or whether it's about poverty, teen mothers, that kind of thing. And it is good to somewhat separate the perception from the reality and deal with the reality, because we hear these things. As you say, it's not a huge surprise to some folks to hear some of these outcomes. But at the same time, to know the actual the one thing that really stuck out to me when you mention, the differences in outcomes that you see in some neighborhoods as opposed to others, is that there was a 21-year difference in life expectancy between one neighborhood and another in Hamilton. And that's maybe the kind of difference that you would expect between two different countries, or I think, and I mean that number really does sort of bring it into focus, right? As that's the stark contrast of sort of quality of life in one neighborhood to the next, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that was probably the figure that smacked people in the face the hardest, and it should. I mean, when you're talking about neighborhoods in a city that have, basically third world outcomes, I mean, that should be something that horrifies people. I mean, we think of ourselves, we live in Canada. We live in a country that has, what we trick ourselves into thinking is free healthcare. I mean, we know it's not free. We pay high amounts of taxes for that. But we've sort of said that's the bargain that we're prepared to enter into as Canadians, that we will support a free public health care system. And, we sort of, have this smug attitude when we look at countries like the United States, where you sort of have to show up in hospital with your checkbook. We like to think, well, that doesn't happen here. We have free health care, which means everyone has the ability to go to a doctor or go to a hospital. And so we sort of trick ourselves into thinking that, well, if we have this sort of equal access to health care, then we all must have, relatively equal levels of health. Mm-hmm. And, this series showed that, there's absolutely nothing equal about the health of people in Hamilton. And in fact, that's probably the thing that was the most startling, is the huge range of variation in people's health across the city. I mean, it's just absolutely staggering, and that should worry people,
Yeah.
And certainly, to address your first point, I think what you're suggesting, what you're sort of wondering was this issue of stigmatization, and that was certainly something that I thought long and hard about. You don't want to be stigmatizing, entire swaths of the city, but by the same token, until we start having a sort of an intelligent discussion about this, no good is going to come.
Well, there has been that sort of reaction to it. There have been great reactions to the project, and there have also been and honest reactions in some ways too. I've heard from some whole neighborhood groups, some residents who live in Code Red areas that have reacted to that being branded as a Code Red neighborhood, right? And there's and this isn't just as new as Code Red, but necessarily there are a lot of folks that it's sort of they're tired of their neighborhood only being described in terms of its negative aspects and its poverty. And I mean, have you come across that reaction from people, and if so, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly, I certainly know that sentiment is out there. I don't have very many people expressing it to me directly, but I know that there is that sentiment out there.
Yeah.
And I guess what I would say is, to some extent, I'm the messenger.
Right.
I'm not sort of throwing my hands up and absolving myself of any blame or responsibility. But at the end of the day, the numbers are what the numbers are.
Right.
And, this is, as we all know, this is the first time that, a project like this was ever undertaken, to the best of our knowledge, of any city in Canada, where you could actually break a city down into its smaller components and look at its health, across the entire spectrum. And the numbers are what the numbers are. I didn't make them up.
Right.
And, we've applied a lot of, rigor and research and, statistical analyses of these things. So, we're comfortable with that. at the end of the day, is it better to just ignore that? I mean, so I would ask people, so if you don't like the potential stigmatization that would accompany this, what's the solution? That we not talk about it, that we pretend it doesn't exist, and that we continue to go on sort of blindly believing that we're all equal. You know, I guess the great thing from my perspective as the person who just, you know, I just write the thing, you know. But the thing that has really given me a lot of satisfaction is the tremendous response from other people in the city of Hamilton, you know, across the entire community. The fact that you and I are discussing this today, nearly 3 years after the series was first published, is astounding to me. I mean, you know, the fact that the city of Hamilton went and hired Paul Johnson to be, you know, directly responsible for improving neighborhoods in the lower inner city. I mean, that is a tremendous response by the city of Hamilton. I mean, there have been these great initiatives that have sprung up from this series. So at the end of the day, maybe there is, you know, maybe it is difficult for people in those areas to have to, you know, sort of see the reality, but on the bright side, at least now people are talking about it and doing something about it.
Yeah, because I don't think I've seen, you know, you've done series for the Spec before, quite like this, where it is a special, sort of a special series, but I think more than any other, you know, media project in Hamilton that I can recall, Code Red is cited by so many folks when they're talking about issues now. It's a good sort of frame of reference for you know, some of our efforts to improve things. But I guess when it comes to, you know, it's one thing, you know, you present the information and these are the issues, this is just the data. When it comes to actually what we do about it, and that's obviously it's not your responsibility. It's I think everybody has a role to play here. How do you, as we were saying earlier, that, you know, it's hard to determine which influence is causing, you know, the most harm in terms of health impacts. How do you start to untangle some of this stuff and isolate, okay, well, this is an environmental issue we need to fix. This is a social health issue we need to fix. This is an economic issue we have to fix. You know, are you seeing sort of those efforts being maybe clarified in any way, that in that sense, that there are some surefire ways that we can actually improve some of these outcomes?
I think that there are, first of all, there's a lot of great ideas out there. And I think that there are a lot of steps being taken within the city of Hamilton, either through initiatives of the public health department, you know, the city of Hamilton, you know, municipal government, McMaster, Mohawk, the school boards. There are initiatives out there that have all started to sort of coagulate, I guess, in the wake of the series. And that's great. The challenge, though, you've sort of hit the nail on the head, is how do you untangle all of these various factors, and then you get into sort of the, you know, sort of mind-numbing and, you know, wheel-clogging mechanics of the bureaucracy that's involved. And so you've got things that are multiple jurisdictions. So, you know, some of these problems require provincial or federal level solutions. So the city of Hamilton can't, for instance, go and arbitrarily decide that everyone in the city who works in the city of Hamilton for whatever company has to make a minimum of $20 an hour. I mean, we don't have the power to do that.
Right.
Some of these initiatives have to come from provincial and federal levels, and of course, some of these things are problems that are national in scope. You know, childcare. What do we do about people living in poverty? You know, that's not a made-in-Hamilton solution. There might be ways that we could have made-in-Hamilton tweaks to the problem, but the overall responsibility rests outside of Hamilton. So, you know, that's where things, I think, bog down a bit, is there's lots of great ideas that Hamilton can implement, but they only can go so far because Hamilton doesn't have the power to, you know, to direct national or provincial strategies.
Right. If people want to check out more, they can log on to the Specs website, thespec.com/topic/code red, and they can find both the Code Red series and Born and the interactive maps that were made as a part of that presentation as well. And on Monday, January 21st at Artward Art Bar at 15 Colburn Street in the Central neighborhood in Hamilton, you'll be doing a presentation on Monday night. It's actually the neighborhood association I belong to, and that starts at 7 p.m. And tell us just a bit about, you've given a presentation a little while ago here at MAC. You gave a presentation on it. Tell people just, I guess, basically what they can expect.
I think basically expect a longer version of what you and I have just talked about. Probably with a PowerPoint so that they can be distracted from the mind-numbing boringness of listening to me. But it's really just sort of going into the numbers a little more deeply. And you know, one of the areas that I now like to touch on when I give a talk, and I got to tell you, I've probably given, 70 to 80 of these types of talks in the last 3 years, which again shows you just how how inspiring it is to know that people still want to talk about these kinds of issues, which is great. I'm really thankful for that. But one of the things that I now like to touch on is the whole issue of income inequality, which is something that is starting to pick up steam around the world in terms of its importance. And you're now seeing lots of people talking about the impact of income inequality and how it's not just bad for people at the bottom end, it's also bad for people at the top end. And it's I think it's time that we all start having a discussion about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning, Steve. And if folks want to check out the event, it's again on Monday, January 21st at 7 p.m. at Artward Art Bar, 15 Colburn Street in the Central neighborhood. Thanks so much, Steve.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
And that was Steve Buist, investigative reporter of the Hamilton Spectator and author of the Code Red and Code Red Born series. And our next guest is going to be Rachelle Martin of the Brantford ER.
What time is she calling in, buddy?
She's actually not calling in. I remembered she's coming in to join us, so I'm just going to go run and meet her. And,
well, then I'm going to go run and get her some headphones.
Well, there you go.
Thanks for that heads up, buddy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. By the way, I like Steve.
Yeah,
that was a very good interview, sir.
Yeah,
you're getting better.
Yeah.
But you know what's really holding you back?
What?
It's the toque.
No.
And the way you're dressed.
The toque keeps my brain. And
is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, then. All right. Fair enough.
It keeps my hairpiece on.
Oh, hey, what are you?
Nothing. Nothing. I'm just
nothing.
Saying.
Don't steal my gig.
None of it's real.
Don't steal my. I'm going to launch my campaign soon.
The beard's not real either.
The beard's not real either.
People don't know that, but the beard's not real.
I'm launching my campaign soon, sir. Look out, Terry. Here I come.
Oh, jeez.
It's coming.
All right.
It's almost like an emergency when the last part of that song right there. It's an emergency. It is 9 o'clock and change. Gunner here with Matt Jelly on 93.3 CFMU. In the Neighborhood is the name of the show if you're just joining us right now. And you just heard something new from 93.3 CFMU. The old from Urbanet Records, Eloquent is the artist, the song Parallel from his EP. So there you go. I'm a little confused over here, Matt.
Why?
Well, I was running.
Oh.
Big men like me don't run when we're out of shape. And I was running in the back room and I was downloading something at the same time. Then I'm like, I got to get some headphones. I'm like running around and everything. And then I jumped in here and she came in and she looked at me. She went, hi, I went, hey, and then I'm like, oh, wait, did she say Rachelle or Rochelle? And then as I said that in my head, I'm like thinking, isn't it a Seinfeld skit where it's Rachelle? It is. Okay. All right, then. All right. Okay. I'm cool with that. Go.
Our guest is Rachelle Martin. I don't know if I've, now you think you've got me thinking I got it wrong.
We'll see how it's awful.
Rachelle Martin. Crisis mental health nurse from the Brantford ER. You live here in Hamilton. You work in Brantford.
That's right. I live right downtown Hamilton.
Yeah. And how long have you been working in the ER at Brantford? 3.5
years now.
Yeah. And what brought you into the medical field? I guess just in general, what attracted you to the job?
Well, I actually studied nursing here at MAC 94 through 97, and I was thinking I wanted to be a public health nurse, but ended up in mental health. I've done some sexual assault and domestic violence care, inpatient mental health, acute care, and more recently started at Brantford in the ER doing crisis triage assessment. Yeah.
And, we hear a lot, well, maybe not enough, but we hear it that, mental health isn't being as taken as seriously, or the public isn't as aware of mental health issues, and obviously stigmas that come along with it as well. There was a report from MAC here that was trying to say that the mental health is as serious, if not more serious, than cancer even, right? And some people reacted to that. Maybe we shouldn't compete cancer against mental health, but are you seeing public attitudes changing about mental health in general? Do you think we're going in the wrong direction?
No, I think we're going in the right direction, but I think it's a slow process. I read those letters to the editor about the comparing of mental illness to physical illnesses like cancer, and I think it's hard for people to grasp that reality because it's not visible in your body,
right.
But it does kill people. It kills a lot of people, and that's called suicide in mental health.
Right.
But and it's a long-term morbid illness that might be more analogous to diabetes or heart disease. In cases where it doesn't kill people with suicide, it's a lifelong struggle that people have and that they have to deal with in various daily ways, much like someone with diabetes.
Yeah, and you do feel the public is getting more aware of the issue, or
I mean, I think we're making progress with that. With the casino debate, I know recently we've heard a lot about gambling addictions, and that is probably the most obvious spin-off of a casino is that real reality for many people in Ontario with gambling addictions. But then there are mental health issues beyond gambling addictions, such as depression, suicide, and those sorts of things that are related as well.
Yeah, and this is the reason we brought you on, and because you wrote it was months ago now that you wrote an editorial to the Spec saying that from your perspective, from what you've seen, Brantford has a charity casino, which is actually about probably half of what they're proposing to put in Hamilton. And you've seen it firsthand. Some of the the problems that have risen in the community that may not be as apparent when we talk about casinos. We talk about economic development. We talk about revitalizing downtown cores and that kind of thing. But there is a whole other component to this that. Personally, what I'm watching in the debate, I'm not seeing it taken as seriously as it should. But what led you to write that letter in the first place? In terms of what have you seen in Brantford that is not a good idea for Hamilton? So
in the ER at Brantford, they have one crisis nurse who is there 24/7 to take in anything and deal with anyone that comes in with anything mental health. Or psychosocial in terms of a crisis. And it frees up the emergency docs and nurses to deal with more medical concerns because often mental health and addictions crises take a lot of time to sort out. So I was, it's funny because I live in downtown Hamilton and I didn't know Brantford very well when I started working there. I would often, when it's warmer weather, I cycle back and forth to work. And I would hear clients coming in on night shift talking about the casino. And I didn't know where it was. So as I'd cycle back and forth, I'd see these like closed down hotels in Brantford that would, offer casino rates or whatever. Yeah. And I was thinking, it's got to be here somewhere, but I couldn't ever like visually see it. And I know people were walking back and forth from the casino to ER in crisis. It's about 2 kilometers. It is downtown Brantford actually, but it's kind of down an embankment. Yeah. So it's hard to visually see, but it is right there around the closed down hotels and stores.
Yeah, well, it's on Icom Drive, which runs right parallel to Colburn Street, which is where they tore down 41 vacant buildings. So even the economics of this aren't really sewn up. But so you said.
So anyway, people were managing to walk with their various crises from the Brantford Casino downtown to about 2 kilometers to where Brantford General Hospital is, and so I was seeing people come in with a variety of concerns and. Some of it, yes, it's straight up gambling addiction related issues. But even more than that is sort of the spin-off. Like there was something about the casino that more than any other venue in Brantford was like a cesspool of problems. So whether you came in with your sexual assault or whether you were referring to a domestic violence incident that had happened, the day before as a result of a partner coming home, from the casino with a big loss and drunk. Or I had a woman who was presented as suicidal because she feared she would never get her children back from CAS because she'd had a drug relapse at the casino. So that's, a super complicated situation where, yes, she could have had a drug relapse anywhere and risked not getting her kids back from CAS care. But the fact is it happened at the casino, and many things happen at the casino, more than they happen at any particular bar in Brantford or any particular mall or, public square. Like it happens at the casino. And I would hear about this all the time in ER. So when I heard that my neighborhood downtown was being considered as a location for a casino, I was very concerned. It's a venue for suffering in Brantford, and I didn't want a venue for suffering 2 blocks from my house.
Yeah. And were you as aware of sort of the issues around? Obviously, as a nurse, you would be aware of all mental health problems and various aspects of them. But when you first moved to that job in Brantford, were you as aware of the issues of problem gambling, that kind of thing, or is this just something that you just started to see this and it really started to occur to you more and more? You didn't start out with a concept in your head, casinos are bad, kind of thing.
Oh, right? No, not at all. In fact, I don't think I knew Brantford had a casino. That just wasn't on my radar until I started working there and hearing about it in the ER, seeing people come in from the casino. Yeah. The one thing I would point out about mental health in general, and we kind of touched on this earlier in talking about how it's not visible, is that really, literally, it's not visible to police services, for example, even to social services. And the reason is because people, if you are sexually assaulted, if you experience domestic violence, if you have a drug relapse, you don't tell police.
Right.
And often these things, even things that are related to criminal activity like prostitution or drugs, of course you're not telling police, and they just don't know.
Right.
So I think when police services, like our own deputy chief recently came out and said there's no increase in crime with casinos, and I guess it depends what you call crime. Like, is it a crime to lose all your money at the casino and have no food for your children or not be able to pay your rent?
Very true. Yeah.
Is it
I mean, and what he it was the Deputy Chief Leenders was at the meeting last night and reiterated what he said in the media that. It seems more like there's not a prevalence of street crime right out in front of the casino, or it's not necessarily that, as well as the OPP is who monitors inside the casino, right? So, but like you're saying, they're working off of reports, right?
That's right. And it sounds like they're trying to be very careful.
They are.
Like I heard Chris Friel say, every mention, even the word casino in a 911 call is recorded on their stats. But again, even for stats that I would keep in ER, so people are coming in confidentially, not reporting these to any social services or obviously the police. But even when I keep my stats, and we keep very detailed stats for the ministry about mental health issues, I still have difficulty documenting the casino as a location for that mental health crisis. Because of the multifactorial nature, I need to report it as suicidality. I need to report it as an addictions drug relapse issue. There's no blank for me to fill out.
No,
happened at the casino, or happened as a result of loss at the casino, or whatever.
Yeah, and that's one issue about actual suicides that take place on casino grounds, on facilities. Now, I know there's been a fight. I know in Quebec there was a fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court. I'm not sure how it's turned out, but there was an activist that was looking for the specific stats on how many people actually commit suicide on the property. Never mind, because when they look at suicide statistics, they're looking at not always where the person commits suicide either. They're looking at where they live, where their residence
proximity.
is. So, but that's an issue. That's actually, there are people that are committing suicide in OLG facilities.
That's right. And it's hard to think of an addiction. I mean, gambling is one of many addictions that people have. It's hard to think of an addiction that kills people so suddenly and quickly, really.
Right, yeah.
I mean, people do kill themselves in the context of other addictive behaviors, but this is one where you can lose you can go bankrupt in a night. And it's, that helps you understand how devastating that is for people, and how anyone who's slightly impulsive might take their life as a result of that in one night.
Well, there are a lot of, especially coming from proponents, there are a lot of these sort of relativistic arguments about, well, we have the LCBO, we have scratch tickets, we have lotto, we have bingo, we have, there are drugs out there, there are, all of these things that we do in society that have an impact, obviously. But like you're saying, that this is sort of an addiction that can wipe out you economically and then lead to all of those other things as well in conjunction with it, right? So, I mean, how do you respond to that notion that people say, well, if X, Y, and Z is okay, why not A, B, and C kind of thing? How do you respond to that?
I think that, like, we do have controls on other addictive substances. Alcohol, for example, we close bars at 2. We don't let people drink all night long.
Right.
We have limits and controls on them, and they talk about having limits and controls on gambling. But I would say that's one thing where we've got plenty of casinos. They're all over Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
If that is truly something that people enjoy doing and can do for entertainment, we really don't need to put something that has such potential to devastate people's lives somewhere new, somewhere additional, somewhere accessible. We know proximity is a huge factor in the development of gambling addictions. If you have to have anything that even slightly interrupts the cycle of addictive behavior, so that if you have to bother to get on a bus to Flamborough, that's just one more step that might give you a moment to choose not to.
Right.
If you're struggling with an addiction, and to put more casinos, more places, especially in vulnerable neighborhoods like downtown Hamilton, where people are already struggling with addiction and poverty. We know that it's a disproportionate number of people in lower socioeconomic brackets that fund casinos
and they spend a disproportionate amount of their
money.
Income.
That's right.
And 36% to 40%, they say, is of the OLG's revenue is coming from problem gamblers too. So
to put that close at hand for people that are already struggling, we just don't need to do that additionally.
Yeah. Now the mayor of Brantford, he came out early on, and he was offered the same sort of opportunity that you had at the Jason Farr's town hall that he held in October, and Chris Friel, he sort of came out and said, I was an opponent early on, I support it now. And a lot of people have repeated that, and his specific advice was to us not necessarily to put it in the downtown core, because there's no clear argument that the Brantford Casino has directly helped the downtown core in terms of spin-off or any of that. What are you hearing from? I guess that's one Brantfordtonian. He's the mayor, but what are you hearing from folks in Brantford? Are there people who have concerns as well about the presence of the casino? And what would you say to some of the statements that have been made by Mayor Friel?
I know there's a lot of concern in Brantford. I think if you ask any social service worker on the streets, you ask any health service sector worker, they know that there are problems as a result of their casino. I remember even at the town hall meeting where Chris Friel spoke, and I spoke as well a few months ago, he said, oh, yes, lives were devastated.
Yeah.
But
right.
And I just can't understand that logic. If there are ways of making money for cities, like Supercrawl, for example, bringing in $6 million in economic spinoff for our city in one weekend.
Right.
And we're talking about $5 million maybe from a casino that would go downtown. If we can make more money in ways that are fun and build our culture and community and don't hurt people,
right.
Why would we ever, go for a small change like that in a way that would even devastate one life, let alone, we know it devastates many lives, not just the people that have problems with gambling, not just the people that kill themselves, but their families, their children. Like, it's just shocking that we would even consider doing something for so little that affects so many.
Well, because you really look at it and the revenues that Brantford have seen, the casino's been there since 99, so it's been there about 12, 13 years. And the revenues, they talk about $50 million over that period kind of thing. But so you break that down year by year, it's $3.5 million that goes to the municipality, right? So in the context of what they're talking about in Hamilton, we get $4.5 million from Flamborough Downs, and they're talking about possibly sort of $6 or $7 million if they move it downtown. They're talking about additional sort of tax revenue that might come from a privately owned casino as opposed to, right? But so we're not talking about, in the context of Hamilton's 1.4, I think billion dollar budget, that's a very small part of our revenue. For Brantford, I would assume it's a similarly small percentage of the revenue that Brantford takes in. It is alarming that we're willing to make that trade-off, that we're willing to, they say it's just a small percentage of people, but when you really look at that small percentage, it's a large number. It's a large amount of people, right? It's 5,000 already problem gamblers in Hamilton. And it is. I guess you've already said so much, but it's alarming that we are willing to make
for
that
sure.
trade-off, right?
And you say, oh well, it's some of the much of the money that the province makes. I mean, a lot of it goes. Let's not fool ourselves. A lot of it goes into the casino operators' pockets.
More than anybody,
for sure.
Yeah.
But the money that the province does get, we talk a lot about how it funds social services or builds community centers. And Chris Friel loves to show you pictures of the community centers they've built with the money. I saw a couple posters that Graham Crawford did, and two of them in particular touched me. One is a mental health nurse and one is a mother. One has a dead body with a toe tag on it, and I put toe tags on dead bodies of people that have killed themselves. And
as a result of the casino.
I don't know if I can say that
Right,
directly.
okay,
As a result
yeah,
of
sure.
addictions, for
Yeah,
sure, and they're very integrated. But you to see that foot and say,
Right.
that some of the money that this man lost went to build this community center,
Right.
and the rest, it's none of your business where that went. It went
Right.
to someone's pocket,
Right.
And it's just why would you trade lives for a community center? We can come up with better ways of making money,
Right.
than that. The other was of a child that says, some of the money that her dad lost that broke up her family went to fund this, after school program for her.
Right.
And the rest went to someone's pocket. I can't fathom how we can justify that.
And Graham, I don't think Graham's exaggerating that either,
No,
right?
that's
that is
straight up,
seriously
and that
the
is
case,
exactly
right?
what I see in ER. I see people that kill themselves and families that break up.
Yeah. And you're from Hamilton originally, is that right?
I wasn't born in Hamilton.
But you've lived here
I've been
long
here
enough
off
that
and on
you
for 20 years, yeah.
And what I know we're talking about low income, that kind of thing, but even just specifically in Hamilton's context, it's a Brantford's a smaller city. It's a sort of a, and it doesn't have the same residential density necessarily as we might hear, right? Both as a professional and as a resident, what are some of the specific to Hamilton concerns that you would have about a casino placed in the core?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a particular concern for Hamilton. For one thing, Hamilton's downtown is quite a bit different from Brantford's in that we've already got a good thing going. I moved downtown with my family 5 years ago and bought a house just around the corner from the James Street North Strip near Mulberry.
Yeah.
And that neighborhood, in 5 years, it's exciting to see what's happening around the corner. There's new restaurants, there's new coffee shops, there's new art galleries. It's thrilling. So that downtown is happening, and a casino, in my opinion, doesn't fit. For Brantford to have a completely decimated downtown,
Right.
build a casino to get a little bit of money to buy one property, to get Laurier to come in and revitalize their downtown,
Yeah.
you might even argue that makes sense. I wouldn't say that. Don't
Right.
quote me as saying that, because it's never worth one life to do that.
Right.
But you could make an argument maybe as a city planner for that.
Yeah.
You cannot in Hamilton make any argument for why a casino would benefit what we have going downtown, particularly when we know that the downtown is a code red neighborhood, to use a specs term, and we know exactly what the demographic has been there. It's changing, but there are so many vulnerable people, and why would you place a casino in the most vulnerable and most densely populated? That's the other factor. It's a very residential neighborhood downtown.
I think
people forget that.
I think the density itself is probably the most important point, because we know that low income people will gamble a disproportionate amount of their income, which is concerning. But it's also not just it's not just a problem that's isolated in lower income people. I spoke to a gentleman last night at the Waterdown meeting on this, that he was a problem gambler. He embezzled millions in order to feed his habit. Ended up suing the casino at the end of the day, because they were enticing him to gamble, and that's part of that business. That's something that's not going away, right? So it is something that not only does it affect disproportionately people who are lower income, but it also affects people who are making good money, that have a good job, that have no reason to fear the problem. That's almost more of a problem that you think, well, it could never happen to me kind
That's
of thing,
right. And we know as addictions go, one other thing to point out is that gambling is terribly underreported as an addiction, terribly undertreated. I think they say 1% of gamblers actually seek help, and then of those people, the amount that they're actually able to successfully treat, again, to compare to some other addictions, that have higher success rates of treatment. It's very small. We don't really know quite what to do with problem gambling yet. And so again, to keep plopping casinos everywhere and have no real documented way of treating effectively for the problems that are going to come out of that, it's shameful.
Well, we're not doing a good job of it now. I don't know how we convince ourselves we'll do a better job in the future. But they talk about that 3 to 5% of people that have moderate to severe sort of gambling problems. But a lot of people, our own public health department has even said about their own 5,006 number of problem gamblers that's likely underreported. We can't tell, right? Do you have any indication of is that a higher percentage? Is there a number you probably not a number you can put on it, but you would agree though that 3 to 5% may not tell the whole story, right?
Oh, for sure. We know that's true across the board with addictions generally, but particularly with gambling addictions. And I think you're right that I hear about gambling addictions in ER from people that have no other social supports or resources at that moment.
Right.
So it's often multifactorial, right? They've got the gambling thing going on and the alcohol or drugs and other social challenges. People who, like you say, are from higher socioeconomic brackets may have more supports, may have more shame around seeking help in ER,
right.
and we'll never see them.
Right. And public health departments, not just here, but pretty much many municipalities in Ontario, Barrie's health department came out with a series of recommendations, Toronto, Hamilton. They varied slightly between municipalities. Toronto's chief medical officer has said the best thing from a public health standpoint is no casino. He was very certain about that. But they have put forward a series of recommendations that if you are going to have a casino, you should have limited hours on the floor. That you have to close for 6 hours a day so that people actually have to go home,
interrupting the
live with the
cycle.
consequences of right. And then no alcohol being sold on the gaming floor, no ATMs on the gaming floor. Essentially a list of things, as Adam Vaughn said to us the other day, the conditions that no casino in the world has ever agreed to.
That's not how you make money.
Right, exactly.
They bring in their most money overnight like that.
It's sitting back here listening, and of course I've been engaged with Matt over this some time and other people because I have to do the show with him, and
Such a burden.
but with you sitting here and you're bringing light to a real emotion. You're touching on emotional buttons for us in this conversation, because what struck me was the toe tag. Immediately, I mean, I'll sit here and I'll joke about stuff. Oh yeah, it's coming. It's this, it's that. But when you put the face of death and human emotion, how it breaks down a family, I'm wondering, maybe you should take the Hamilton City Council. Okay, you guys got a really big decision here, and we don't want you to take it lightly. Why don't you come to the morgue with me?
Oh, I know. I've
said
that to Chris
could,
Friel. Come to Brantford ER.
Why don't you come here and we'll show you
See
some
the
people.
lives.
We'll show you people whose lives have been wrecked. And we'll show you what happens to the city. And by the way, here's someone's father or mother with a toe tag, and their family's lives are dead. Their life on this planet has ended. So whatever happens now is up to them. But look at what's left of these people.
And I think you're
the
right.
Legacy.
You only need to see it once. And people don't understand that when I say just one family, just one child affected by that.
Yeah.
If you see it firsthand, it's enough to know that that's a dirty, dirty business.
Yeah. So no matter how many times you can paint a scenario saying, well, it's good for the economy, it's good for this, it's good for that. Why do we have a society if you're just murdering the people you're supposed to protect in the name of a dollar? And
the fact is, even if you don't care at all about people, it costs money to help and treat those people after you ruin their lives. The social and healthcare costs for our city, for every dollar we bring in at that casino, what is it going to cost us in the spin-off effects that we are going to, and that's going to be our municipality that has to pay those healthcare and social service costs, not the province, not Mercanti.
Yeah, if I was a bigger media establishment than I am right now, if I was CH Television, I would be doing a documentary on this. I'd be doing a series on something like this, or even Cable 14, that sort of thing, because that's your job. to report on stuff like this.
Yeah.
Nothing against Britney Spears falling down a flight of stairs or Lady Gaga. I still don't care if you air those things. But things that affect Hamiltonians in Southern Ontario, that sort of thing, these are the things that you should be reporting on and doing stuff. That's investigative journalism, not that other crap is what it is. And by the way, you can say crap. I checked.
Oh, I know.
You can say crap. Yeah. Okay. But I just thought I would touch upon that, just because there's been a lot of conversations this last couple of weeks, and a poster says a lot from Graham. And I like what the rally thing, but when you said that, it really struck home to me. Like, that's it. Like, people aren't really seeing the big picture in this.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of those, those recommendations that have been made, the no booze on the floor at a casino, or no ATMs and limiting the hours. If those were actually implemented, which I don't think they ever will. I don't think we have any reasonable, determination that it's going to happen, because, I was out to Flamborough on the weekend at the slots facility there, ATMs, 2 bars on the floor, that kind of thing. It's very much a part of the industry. If those actually were put in place, that people had to go home at the end of the night, for 6 hours at least, and would that make you feel better about a casino proposal, or do you think still that's really not enough, that those are just a few impediments, but the problem still exists?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the rationale for a medical officer of health recommending that, I guess.
It's harm reduction,
yes, it's
right?
harm reduction, exactly. If you're going to have a casino, that makes a lot of sense. It interrupts that addiction cycle, gives people a moment to reflect, keeps people from having easy access to more and more and more of their addictive behavior. I think about what I see in ER, and I think I'm not sure that'd help a whole lot with most of what I see.
Yeah.
With most of what I see, it's going to happen, whether or not you're closed between 2 and 10.
Right. Yeah. And the, as you mentioned too, the social costs of it, they end up, it goes into the hospital system, it goes into the social service agencies, it goes into, we can't even map those impacts because of the lack of reporting on some of those problems. We can't be inside people's heads or know what happens behind closed doors, obviously. And so is there sort of a, when we look at the social impacts, how can we even develop an idea of, the OLG brags that it puts $40 million into problem gambling treatment kind of thing, but it obviously doesn't stop the problem. $40 million is spent, and we're not. Is there basically like that some costs end up here, some costs end up over here, some costs end up over here, so there's no real accounting
That's
of.
right. Yeah.
At the end of the day, we can't weigh are we spending more than $3.5 million at the end of the day in associated costs? Then do the revenues balance out to what we're spending to mitigate the problems that in pursuit of that revenue?
Right. And as far as I know, Brantford has made no effort to keep track of that, and they couldn't, again, because they're trying. If they say that they are not experiencing an increase in calls about the casino criminally, or if they're not having to increase their police budget to monitor it, or of course, people are seeing gambling addictions in social service agencies in the community, but they've never, as far as I've known, put a price tag on what that cost them. And frankly, they would have no idea what it costs Brantford ER to treat those people in sexual assault and domestic violence services, or ER mental health and addictions crisis triage.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's such a multifaceted debate, because we're having our conversation about this locally, and then it starts to. And admittedly, I never really thought much about problem gambling so much. I've thought about various sort of impacts that may affect people, but without having a casino, right downtown in Hamilton ever, and Flamborough being so far away. I mean, I don't drive, so it'd be impossible for me to get to Flamborough. If I wanted to, I had to get a ride when I went. Mm-hmm. But I guess I lost my train of thought there. But people aren't as aware of of these impacts. Are you worried that maybe on such a short timeline, none of this is really going to come out for the public discussion? That people aren't
I'm very worried about it.
Yeah.
I hear people say two things in pro casino. They say jobs, and they say don't be a nanny state. I have a right to entertain myself with gambling. And to both I say, if you are a safe and healthy gambler, there's just really many places you can go, and so we don't need more. You don't need one right downtown in my backyard. You can go to many places if you really enjoy gambling. That's great. And the other is jobs, and we know that that's just straight up not true for Hamilton specifically. There's a bunch of jobs in Flamborough that'll be lost for a few jobs in downtown that will be gained.
Well, they said last night 3,500 jobs that are tied to the horse racing industry in Flamborough, and now they're talking about 1,000 jobs maybe downtown, and a lot of those folks who work in Flamborough are going to be seeking those jobs.
So you're saying that people in downtown Hamilton, you're going to be giving them jobs. They're actually better Hamiltonians than the people in Flamborough.
Well, no, but
that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I think in the end, it's a net loss of jobs.
It's a it's a class system. That's all this is that you're breaking people down to classes and what's acceptable. So the people. So what you're saying basically is by putting this casino in that you're gaining jobs. And PJ said, well, it could go other places, so why should they get the jobs? Well, why are you taking jobs from people from Flamborough? They're part of Hamilton. We're all together now. Why would you do that?
And larger studies show that those jobs really are not jobs that are well-paying and don't bring families out of poverty.
A lot of them are part-time contract positions. Yeah.
But even at that, you're saying it's okay to take away from them.
Right.
So you really don't care about people. Let's just call it. You really don't care.
Right.
So it's funny if this is the mentality, if you're going to put this downtown and it's going to happen, and your message is you really don't care about people. That's the vibe I'm getting. If I was a Hamiltonian and I knew there was an election coming up in 2 years, I would keep reminding these people that are supposed to be running my city. So you really don't care, is what you're telling me.
That's all I can figure.
I've been reminding that of.
You really don't care. So I care. So I think I'm gonna find a candidate, and I'm gonna get rid of you to show you how much I care. That would be the overall feeling I'm getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean. The point I was trying, I regained my point that I lost a second ago, is just that we're having the local debate about whether it should go in downtown Hamilton or whether Flamborough Downs should open or not. But a lot of the proponents are sort of throwing out things like pretending that people are pushing for total prohibition of all forms of gambling, that kind of thing, right? Which is a total straw man argument. But how do you see the province? Obviously, all three parties have played a role in bringing the OLG, to Ontario, to bringing casinos to Windsor, to Brantford, to Sault Ste. Marie, that kind of thing. And so, what do you see that the province could do differently about the entire business, and how they're running the OLG, and how they're this expansion plan? A lot of people have said maybe we should hold off on this until people get more time to wrap their head around this. They can actually have a referendum. But what would you suggest that they could reform the entire idea and make it something that's both a reasonable way to raise revenue, and they're not going to be so just brutally affecting communities like this, right?
Right. And that is not my area of expertise to recommend to Ontario what we should do. But I certainly, at a personal level, as someone, and professionally as someone who cares about this issue, I've thought as soon as I'm done with Hamilton and trying to prevent a casino from ruining lives in my own downtown neighborhood, I definitely want to start working at the provincial level to stop them ruining lives all over Ontario. Yeah. It's just the amount of money. I think it's like 35% of the money that comes in is from 1% of the problem gamblers. Yeah. That's, again, it's shameful as a province that we know that the majority of that revenue is coming from people that have addictions and that are giving you their money because of their addictions. Yeah. It's just unfathomable.
Yeah. And that's, it's been backed up and backed up and backed up, that number, that sort of 30 to 40. Last night I heard 40 from CAMH, right? So it is alarming. It's alarming how that's how the business works. And again, I didn't know any of this. A year ago, I didn't know any of this about how the OLG. Yeah. So it's been illuminating in that sense, right?
That's right.
But, will you be on hand tonight?
Yeah.
You'll be at tonight's meeting at City Hall at 6:30?
That's right. A shout out to everyone to come out to the rally at 5:30 outside of City Hall. It's going to be fun. Yeah. Horses, drummers.
There were some horses there last night. Yeah. But thanks so much for joining us. If you just tuned in halfway through the interview there, this was an interview with Rachelle Martin, a crisis mental health nurse from Brantford ER. I'm stuttering a lot today. Sorry.
Thank you.
It's the
Thanks
coffee
so
is what it is.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It is 9:35 right now. Gunner and Matt Jelly here on In the Neighborhood, 93.3 CFMU. New stuff to the radio station at CFMU. Local band Lee Harvey Osmond, made up of the singer-songwriter from Junkhouse, Tom Wilson. Here's the tune, Oh Linda, and I believe it's the cover from Willie P. Bennett on In the Neighborhood. 9:15 change right now. If only the mics were on for the venting that was just happening. Hey, that was some new stuff from Lee Harvey Osmond from the album The Folk Singer, of course, and that's off of Leighton recording. And you heard in that set of music, Oh Linda, of course, Big Chief, and a very beautiful 5-minute song called Break Your Body featuring Hawksley Workman. And it was taken, the video itself has just been released, and I think I read it on CBC News that it was a segment of this movie. And Tim Gibbons, the local dude, is in the video. Tom, of course, from the band, is in the background truck. And, oh, my God, Kathleen Edwards plays the lead in the role. So there's a 5-minute video out there, and you should check it out. And once again, it's called Break Your Body. And, of course, as usual, when I play Hamilton music, I always say support Hamiltonian, support Hamilton music sort of thing. So anyway, as we're moving along here, very emotional show, I thought, today.
Well, yeah,
I thought, you know,
I mean, both guests. Steve Buist obviously is, put a lot of attention into the Code Red story and continues to.
Right.
And I kind of see too that he cares about it more than just another story kind of thing. Because as I said, Steve's done those sort of special investigation pieces before. But
and I like the fact that he said 3 years afterwards we're still talking about it. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I it's my worry is that we talk about it and we don't do enough about it. That's obviously not on Steve. That's on council. That's on the public. That not just council. I blame council for everything under the sun, but it's sort of I hope the public understands more of these issues and kind of and it should inform us when we make decisions. And I didn't want to politicize that with casino stuff, but I think it's another health issue that we need to all decisions we need to take public health into consideration, right? And I think first and foremost, I think just like on the job site, it's supposed to be health and safety focused, right? But, But and great to have Rachelle Martin, and I've actually been. She's obviously busy being a nurse, right?
Yeah.
But, I've been trying to have her on for a little while because
that's great that she came down.
Yeah, because we need to hear all sides of this. And
who's the biggest chicken out of all of Hamilton?
Jamie Tennant.
Jamie Tennant. Oh, see, now he knew what I was going to do. I didn't even know he was coming in.
There he is.
And I said, hey, we got a couple minutes left. We got to wrap up. You want to vent? You want to get it out of your system?
Yeah.
Because he gets all wound up. Anyone who knows Jamie, he is the guy doing the Richard Dreyfuss. You're not going to be happy until that shark comes up and bites you on the ass. From Jaws.
Oh, boy,
and I've always compared him to that.
Yeah.
You could do worse than being called Richard Dreyfuss, I suppose.
But it was
you do actually now. You do look like a
because of the beard.
I've been told it's the beard. Right?
It is. Yeah,
it's the
I'm
beard.
supposed to get more wound up, and get more and more wound up, and then start talking like this.
Yes, you do.
It's weird. It was weird one time. This will surprise you, but somebody said I look like Richard Dreyfuss, and it was like a kid who I was like, how does this kid know who the hell Richard Dreyfuss is? But
because Mr. Holland's Opus is a big hit with the under 10 crowd.
I informed him he was incorrect.
You're
sent
incorrect.
Him on his way.
Did you? Well, I always. Sometimes I look at you and I go, "It's Mick Foley." He looks more and more like Mick Foley.
Fair enough. I can
because especially today, you got the rolled up sleeves, the white shirt that Mick had on the end of his career. I got
my sad Jelly for Council T-shirt on underneath.
Sad. He's got a sad
You
T-shirt.
have a sad T-shirt.
I do. Yeah.
No, I got nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
I got nothing to vent about. All is well. I'm interested in this sort of. It's not really nothing to go public with yet, but there is this budding movement to put together some kind of independent media award in Hamilton in the memory of Maggie Hughes.
Yeah.
So I've been following that, and that's like, if it happens, it's nowhere near even really beginning, but it's very, very cool that some people in town are talking about it.
Good.
The acknowledgement is beautiful. Like that's good.
Thing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to come on the record. I don't know if it's been discussed here. You mentioned it on Tuesday, but I want to come on the record and say that I'm not unhappy with the compromise that our friend Jason Farr managed with Blanchard and
the Gore buildings. We haven't had much of a chance to chat about it much.
That's
we
been
mostly
drowned
on
out since this.
A lot of things have been drowned out. There's the Aerotropolis thing's going on right now too.
Yeah.
It's a huge story, right? So it's tough when all these things compete for our attention. But I'm happy that I'm. So I guess for folks who are listening, they might not know what's going on with the Gore Park buildings. The owner put in a demolition permit right before Christmas, sort of knowing that council wasn't going to have time to meet to sort of stop it. So that Jason Farr and Brian McCaddy sort of came forward to the developer, David Blanchard, and tried to convince them, hey, we actually wanted to designate these buildings, and find a solution. So what came out at first the other day was 3 out of 5 of the buildings would be saved, kind of thing. It's gotten more, the concept, the more I've read about it, has gotten more towards saving the facades of some of the buildings. And I'd be happy with any kind of compromise, really. And I have friends who disagree with me on this, because I know I have friends who, and I agree with them. Any building that is structurally sound that can be reasonably restored, I want to see saved.
But I mean, the problem is,
if we don't accept a compromise ever, then we'll never get another compromise.
That's right.
If MAC had said, with the Board of Ed building downtown, if they had said, we're going to save the rotunda, or we're going to save something, elements, we're going to even keep the sculpture here or something, I would have been a bit happier than I was. Right?
That's right.
So they gotta...
and the thing too, though, is that according to David Blanchard, a lot of the building is structurally unsound and unusable. So it comes down to some people just saying, "Well, I don't believe you."
Well,
and that's
it's not a matter of whether I believe him or not. I would always like to hear from like a civil engineer on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've heard it, like Bob Corral, who's a civil engineer here. He told me years ago about the Lister block, how people were saying, LiUNA said, the Lister block won't survive another winter, when they were talking about it in 2004, and obviously that came to be untrue. And he said, if the will exists, any structure, unless it's literally falling.
The problem, I think, and I'm playing devil's advocate, because I'm pretty much on side with what your guys' politics are on most of these issues, but when the people who care don't have any money to put up,
right?
And Blanchard says, "Well, who's going to pay the double the cost it's going to take?" I don't know how to argue that.
I really
don't.
I always say that if you want to change something, you got to have money. Money changes everything.
The aspect of it that I
quote Cyndi Lauper.
What I've been saying for a while about it is that I may not disagree with the intent of any developer that wants to tear something down, that kind of thing, but the real problem isn't. I don't place the blame on David Blanchard, in a singular way. I think it's the buildings that he owns aren't designated as heritage buildings, right? They're not, and that doesn't mean they aren't. But that's the process we have in place for identifying heritage in Hamilton.
Well, there's years of mistakes and years of undone processes that have led to this. There's so many parties to blame, and the blame can be spread out over 50 years or something like that.
And I would be, I've had to become reasonable about this, right?
Sure.
I've had to have it beat into me time and time again. But what I would be equally happy with, as the buildings being fully restored, what I would equally be happy with is a project like that if the concept drawing as they showed it happens, perfect.
Sure.
As far as I'm concerned, marrying the new in with the old is a great idea. But beyond that, just a new commitment to actually deal with the root cause here. We have 7,500 buildings on a registry that we say they have value. Those aren't not necessarily designated. And we've stopped designating buildings at the same rate that we used to, right? So, I hope it leads us to solving some of those conditions that led to this. Otherwise, I don't know what we can do to hopefully hope for the best, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, we got to wrap the show. Thanks, Jamie, for sitting in, and excellent show today, Matt. Of course, we'll have everything up on gunnersmith.ca on the website.
Yeah.
And you can download this podcast as well if you visit CFMU.
And tonight, City Hall, 5:30.
5:30.
Come on down for the No Casino rally.
Yeah, and bring your toe tags.
Oh, jeez.
I might wear one.
Oh, boy.
Going out on some more Lee Harvey Osmond for you right now. Paul Panchisic, Breakfast of Champions on the way.